Hi, it's Dustin Lanier. Thanks for listening. Please find me on LinkedIn for original public sector operations content every week. And please reach out to me if I and my team of procurement professionals at Civic Initiatives can help you be a public procurement change agent. Jenn Myers, thanks for joining today. So I'm really excited to be able to highlight someone who is really up and coming in public procurement. And you actually had the honor of being named NIGP's Young Professional in 2020, which I think is a great thing. So tell me about how that works and what that means to you.
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me. So I was selected as the 2020 Young Professional, and which was a great honor. You actually cannot apply for this award. It is something that the member council and talent council and the governing board of NIGP look at different people that are up and coming in not only the organization, but also in procurement. And so my role with the city of Tucson, moving up, I volunteer on the NIGP Pipeline and Placement Committee. I've been a volunteer on that committee and worked my way up to the chair. Currently, my second year, my term will end in June. I'm, been a part of that. Been interested in other councils, and other volunteer opportunities. But I believe that through some of that and some of my volunteerism, some of my getting involved, also at my local chapter, is probably what helped my name come about in that process. I don't know a whole lot as to how you get selected, but it was definitely a great honor to be selected for that. So for anyone that is also interested in that, I would encourage them to volunteer also at your local chapter as well as at the NIGP Institute level.
That's great. So, so you mentioned you're with the city of Tucson, of course. So tell me about your role for the city. And since I'm trying in this sequence to talk about how people come into procurement, how did you start in procurement and what keeps it interesting to you?
So currently I am a procurement manager. When I started at the city of Tucson, I was an administrative assistant in our P card program. And a few months into that, transferred over to our contracting division. And I was like, wow, this stuff's really interesting. I want to move up. So I interviewed. So I actually shadowed a lot, even in my administrative assistant role. So putting forth that effort early on with the shadowing. And then when a opportunity came up to be a contract officer, I applied, was successful. And then 2 years later, became a senior contract officer, obtained certification through UPPCC for my CPPB, Certified Public Procurement Buyer, and was successful in becoming a principal contract officer. Eventually began supervising people, and then they created the procurement manager role, and I was moved into that. And so that's where I am now, actually working on training new people. But I think the part that keeps it interesting for me is that no day is the same. You do have routine tasks. You do have, every contract, has the same process, but every contract is unique. And what you go through the process and learn about for our end using departments, which are our customers, as well as working with vendors and learning about their specialty, in the where they fall into helping our organization, really is what keeps it interesting for me. And learning how my job helps them do their jobs. So I work a lot with public safety, with fire and police. And so at the end of the day, when I see an ambulance driving by and the people in there, or somebody being loaded up into the ambulance, I helped buy that gurney that patient is now on as they're being transported. And so if I didn't do my job, then fire and police couldn't do their job. And so when I see, the news articles where body camera footage is happening, I helped buy those body cameras and help maintain those with our police department. So those are things that in the background I helped accomplish, and it helps, the police department do their job. So that's the part that's really interesting and exciting for me, is being able to actually see what I purchased in action or contracted and, negotiated or whatever that piece of it is, seeing it in action out with, people using it. So one of my coworkers does transportation. So we always tease that, when a new bridge is built, oh, we're going over that person's bridge that he built. Although he didn't
Mhm.
build it, he created the contract that resulted in that bridge that now people travel across every day. And it's like it's always been there. So it's the little things like that that people don't really realize how that gets put into place. A lot of people are like, oh, there's this new bridge, I'm going to go drive over it. And so it's things like that where we're in the background making that happen.
So let's keep playing with that. So this week there's a webinar that NASPO is doing around college students and why they should consider procurement. And I actually sent it to my college age son to participate in. So I think it really is something that has to be thought through and planned, like how we get the next generation to really consider procurement as a career, because the phrase is a little stilted, right? And it's not something that they may be familiar with. But I find there's a lot of opportunity for creativity in procurement that is fulfilling to young people. So what message would you have to young people when they're considering whether procurement is something that they shouldn't just fall into, but they can actually plan for and seek to execute, and why they would consider that?
It's definitely rewarding. And that would be my first thing that I would say to them is that at the end of the day, if you are a public servant or just a servant, if you have that kind of leadership style or mentality that what you do helps other people, you're going to be so successful in a role like this. I actually have a niece that just graduated from Arizona State University. I am a U of A fan, so we gave her a hard time about that. However, she actually, when she started in the procurement, hers was more supply chain. Um, she would call me and she'd say, okay, I have this question or this. And when her mom had told me that that's what she was going for, I had reached out to her and I was like, hey, I'm so excited for you. And she goes, you actually understand what I'm talking about. And I said, yes, I do, because I do this.
Mhm.
Um, but what I've learned about procurement, like I said, I started in the P card program. When I got my call for my interview, I actually hung up my phone and said to my husband, what's a P card? And he was like, oh, it's a purchasing card. It's just a regular credit card. They call it a P card because that's what governments use. And it's really that procurement card for them to make their purchases. But the things that I've learned over time is that you really get involved with a lot of the things that you're purchasing and buying. And so the more you learn about those things, the more rewarding that it is. The city of Tucson had a half-cent sales tax a few years ago that was adopted for money for our public safety. And so that half-cent sales tax would go towards helping them get supplies that they needed, new vehicles. There was other pieces of that, for the roads and so forth. But the first year of that, I spent a lot of time working through a lot of different contracts. And about 2 years in, they bought a new vehicle and they did a press release where our mayor came and spoke about all of the different things that we had purchased. And I remember going to that because I was invited, and there being a table with all of the equipment next to the ambulance, and everything on the table but one piece of equipment I had put a contract together for them to purchase. And so I got to see basically the fruits of my labor. I was able to actually see it all in person and see, wow, this is what the fire department uses every single day. And I helped them get every single one of those. And so it was to me, very impactful, very rewarding to see those. And so that's would be my main message to anyone interested, especially in public government or giving back, is it's so rewarding at the end of the day.
So I did an infographic recently where I tried to bring together some of the things that I think are interesting priorities to try to work through for public procurement shops in a 21 for 2021 style. So when I showed that to you and asked you to pick something that you thought you might be able to take and expand a little bit, the one around staff competency and succession planning seems like an appropriate flow off of the conversation that we had the last when I was trying to call you to make sure we scheduled this the right way, you were doing a training. So clearly providing staff competency and also thinking about how you build a program that can sustain over generations is something that is on your mind or a part of your mission. So talk about how you invest in staff competency development and where succession planning falls into your kind of, mentality.
Definitely succession planning, I would say, is huge. And I would say for the city of Tucson, we had a core group that had been a part of, procurement for so long. And many of those people started hitting retirement or moved on to be a director, at another entity. And so slowly you start losing those people that have that institutional knowledge. And so I will say that our staff currently, so I'm a procurement manager, we have another procurement manager and my procurement administrator. And the other procurement manager for my co-manager has been with the city for 15 years, I believe, and has been doing procurement for, I believe, 13. And then my procurement administrator has been doing this for over 20 years. And in the past, we had directors like Marquita Gillespie, who a lot of people know her name, has been in procurement for a long time. So I had the privilege of working under her and learning from her, and along with other colleagues. But all of those colleagues have left. So now, me being a procurement manager, I've been with the city of Tucson for 8 years. And although I've been in procurement that entire time, I'm still new to the profession. And so everyone underneath me is still very new to the profession as well. And we have a team of 20 now. And a lot of our contracting staff have only been doing this. We just hired 4 new ones. So they started in January. So they've been there a month. We've had other people that have only been doing this for 2 or 3 years. So it's still very, very new. And so we are in that succession planning time. And so things that I have learned in my time is that you do have those people where you will lose that institutional knowledge, where succession planning is so important to do now, so that you have those people that can replace the people that have been doing this for many, many years already. So training is, you could never stop learning. Even myself as a procurement manager, I'm still learning. I'm always running into things that are new, have not happened before, or I'm finding somebody else that has happened, which is one thing that I love about the procurement profession, is that you have this so large network of someone who has been through it, or someone who can help talk through that process, because they also understand the procurement profession. They understand the language. And so you can talk to them and get that advice on, how to move forward. And so using those examples of different things that you've gone through and training staff is huge, as well as sending them to webinars, sending them to education classes, sending them to forums, to conferences, to anywhere that we can find a place that they can learn and expand on, as well as myself going to those things. So there's so much out there and so many resources that we try and definitely make sure that we're using. Just like you said, the NASPO is having that webinar coming up. So using those outreach places also to continue education.
There also has to be a little bit of humility about thinking about the whole of the shop and not just the one project, because a lot of times the reason we don't do training or succession planning is because it's more efficient for us to do it for ourselves, and slowing down and teaching somebody how it's done or why I'm making this choice or that choice. When you're being really pressed by the urgent, sometimes it's easy to lose connection that's important. And making it so that people will, that the teaching exercise is as important as the task that is being worked, I think is very important.
Correct. And so the nice thing is too, for us at the city of Tucson, when we hire new people, we have them shadow before they're actually just kind of, I guess, thrown to the wolves, as that comment is made, or that what is the word I'm looking for? But
throwing the wolves is a pretty good one.
Yeah. But so sending them out for those types of things is, we want them to kind of experience and watch someone else do it and shadow it, And that way, when they have it for them, that person that was helping train them can shadow them, so that if they have questions, they're right there with them and they can answer those questions and get answers pretty quickly to move forward. And that way they are set up for success. So really that is, in that succession planning is really setting people up for success so that they do hopefully find a procurement career very rewarding and want to stay in it. And I will say most people I've run into, myself included, you didn't go looking for a procurement career. You landed in it by accident. And then you fall in love and you spend many, many years doing the procurement profession duties or whatever that is, for that individual.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's shift gears and talk about Copper Chapter. So you're am I correctly describing the position that you're the president of Copper Chapter?
Yes,
Okay.
The Copper Chapter of NIGP, yes.
Right. So I was one of your attendees for your winter conference, and you guys did a great job. And
Yep.
there's a lot of changes that have been having to happen with chapters, since we can't gather in the same way, or we can't use it as a vehicle to build the right kind of relationships with suppliers. So I've seen a lot of creative things being done, and I thought you guys did a great job on the work that you did recently. So talk about how important that the chapter infrastructure is for the community of folks that you deal with, and how to keep that connection going for procurement professionals, and what you've had to do in this time frame where things have changed so much.
So for the Copper Chapter, it was definitely a transition for us. We only met in person previously to the pandemic. We had been talking about trying to make online meetings available, but we just hadn't gotten there yet. And so when the pandemic originally happened, it started, really March of last year, when for Arizona, everyone was sent home, don't have any meetings more than, 5 people or 10 people. We canceled both our March and our April meetings, and we were like, what do we do? Our board got together and we're like, we got to still meet. It's still good education. We want to make sure that we're still connecting with other public procurement professionals and making sure that that happens. And so what do we do? So we said, let's go online. We're just going to start it. We'll have a meeting. We'll see how it goes. If it goes great, we'll continue on. And so we had our May meeting, and it went really well. So we said, hey, we missed March and April. We don't normally meet in June and July because of summer. Why don't we go ahead and have our June and July meeting? And we kept going, and we have been meeting virtually ever since. And our board has actually said, when it is safe for us to start going back in person, we do not want to lose the virtual environment. So we are going to make sure that that happens. And that has been wonderful. We've seen our attendance raise from having about 40 people in person to about 60 people in attendance virtually. Our chapter covers the Southern Arizona region, and some of those cities or smaller places outside of Tucson metropolitan area couldn't always come for an hour and a half meeting, because it's an hour and a half drive to get there. So they've been able to participate more. There's no, driving to downtown Tucson, looking for a parking spot that you got to pay for, and then going to this meeting. So it's been really beneficial, and our education has expanded because we've also been able to bring people in outside of the Tucson area. So we had Victor Lemur out of Washington present a session for us just on Zoom on tips and tricks for when you're participating in conferences, which we actually was able to take his information and apply it to our conference this last week that we had. So we've seen lots of benefits from having that virtual environment. We do all, we can't wait to get back together. I've promised our chapter lunch, because in March is procurement month, and the chapter always celebrates that. And so we haven't done that, but eventually when we get back in person, we intend to buy our chapter lunch to celebrate all the great things that we have done in the past year of this pandemic.
So before we move off that into the final question, for people who may watch this who aren't steeped in the intricacies of all the NIGP structure, there's a lot of chapters, right? And it's
Yes.
very important for the connection of people across. So, so you talked about kind of how the chapter transitions and functions in the virtual environment, which is great, and that's definitely good content. Even more fundamental than that, talk to me about why chapters are important and what kind of role that they play in keeping you connected and all of your peers across all these chapters. Again, because some people may look at it and it looks like a lot. So, but it is, and it's important. So talk to me about how the chapters drive your experience.
So when I first joined the chapter was obviously through my work. They said, "Hey, you've moved into a contracting officer role. We're going to now you will join this membership. You'll go to these meetings. You'll get some education, and that you'll be a part of that." So I initially started going because I was told to go. Great. And the more that I went and the more that I learned, the more involved I became. And so for that is how I obviously moved up, became part of our board. I originally served as a secretary for 2 years as my first position on the board. Took a year off and then was elected as president most recently. So last year and then this year as president of our chapter. And the things that I've learned from being part of the chapter is that it focuses on it is by region. And so Southern Arizona chapters, so we have the city of Tucson, Pima County, Tucson Unified School District, Marana, just to name a few. And the nice thing is it automatically connects me with those people. And it's without me having to do anything, without having to reach out. It automatically puts me in touch with those people that are in my surrounding area that understand the market just of the area that I work in. And so working through that gave me those networking opportunities to connect with people, to find contracts that I could piggyback on for specific things of our area. Then working with other chapters, I've been able to expand for the same things using those contracts to piggyback on that, every procurement officer loves because it helps us do our job a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
Different things like that. And then on the institute level, which is, throughout the United States and Canada, even bigger networking opportunities. And then having that opportunity to connect to somebody to say, "Hey, I've never bought this before, and this is new to our market, but who has done this? Can I find somebody that has?" And I'm able to reach out to that network and find somebody that has done it. Or even just from my chapter alone, the chapter academy that NIG puts on, I've made connections. I went to that last year and we learned about golf as a fundraiser. We had never done golf as a fundraiser. It's something that we want to look into because Tucson, Arizona has a lot of great golf courses.
Mm-hmm.
We are a place that people go golf again. We were like, why have we never thought of this? And so different things like that, those opportunities we would have never even thought of without being able to connect with other chapters. So it really is important to have that network of procurement professionals, but to realize how large the network is so important and so beneficial to all of us to be able to have that, to be able to reach out to other people and get involved.
That's great. Yeah, I look forward to doing some other stuff with NIGP on chapters later in the year. So, so the content that you're giving is fantastic. So lastly, I think it's I think it might be illegal to not ask a COVID question to procurement officers in every time I do these interviews. I'm pretty sure it's required. So but let me take it a little different way, right? So there's no reason to necessarily go all the way back to the beginning where we were in this adrenaline zone of changing and pushing, although of course you can feel free to share some stories if you wish. There was an article I posted in December that talked about the need to kind of pivot from the adrenaline response into building a sustained psychological stamina for our staff, because it is still hard. There is still a lot to do. There is a lot of push of this thing, which while now normalized is new, and we had all of our old stuff that still needed to be done. So, and we need to manage our the way that staff works so that we avoid burning people out, because that's kind of goes back to what we talked about before, right? About the need to bring the staff with us and build those competencies. So, talk to me about how, as Tucson and the leadership that you guys have, you're hiring some new people. So that's a component of trying to deal with staff burnout. So how are you guys trying to mainline all of this COVID work that has now become a huge responsibility for our shops, and try to really think about keeping people kind of in the game and psychologically resilient as we absorb all this new work?
Well, definitely burnout is a topic of conversation a lot, as I'm sure it is for a lot of people. Definitely, using those resources, our employee assistance programs for those types of things. But some of the stuff with the COVID, I will say just for the city of Tucson, even starting from the beginning, we only accepted in-person proposals. So we quickly had to figure out how do we move forward with that. So one of those was, okay, electronic submittals, how can we make this happen? And as we've gotten further in that process and further into the work from home or work from anywhere idea, we are moving towards electronic everything. And so the city of Tucson, we always joke that we're so behind the times, and this has made us come up to the times and has been very beneficial. So we have moved into electronic proposals. The intent will be that we will never go back to paper proposals. We are working on having electronic files so that they can be put on a shared drive and they're accessible that way. Currently, our records retention is all paper files. So we're working on putting in our application to move to electronic files. So for the city of Tucson, we've really moved into, the current century as much as possible. We've upgraded technology. There was no ability to work from home before. And a lot of public government, that was uncommon. You don't work from home. It was you are going to an office. And so finding that middle ground as to, okay, you are here today and tomorrow you are only at home. And so as we move forward, one of the things that our city manager has really taken into consideration is, how do we keep allowing us to work from home? Because that is something that's very big for newer families and college students that are creating families or starting a family. Having that opportunity to be able to work from home, or that flexibility, is a huge draw for younger people. And so we want to continue to be on the rise and have the city of Tucson be an attractive place. So working from home, or having the flexibility of working from home a few days a week, is one of those things that the city of Tucson is implementing and working towards, so that it is an option to keep drawing people that are interested in serving in public government.
And examining components of the work to say, does this really add value? Is this really important to do? Because every time you have to do something that takes time, it's taking time from other things you could be doing. So what you're describing is saying, lean into the change and the what this is forcing us to examine and look at, and being able to say what's really important and what can we shift off of. So moving off of paper into electronic, creating that, I think does a lot to help the procurement function, not just be the rule enforcer, but really look at value creation. That's some of what I heard with what you were just saying. Is that consistent?
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah. Are there other examples of things that you guys changed, where you look and you're like, why are we doing this? I've had people talk about notaries, and people talk about different requirements to start being a business, or looking at the bids. Anything else that stands out that's something new that you guys did in addition to the paper bids?
Definitely for us was the moving to the electronic bidding. I think the other thing would probably be our committee meetings, whereas in the past everything was in person, and having the opportunity to move to a virtual committee meeting. We have now had committee members outside of the Tucson area, because in the past, if you had somebody in the Phoenix area, which is a couple hour drive from where we live, they would have to drive down every time you had a meeting. And so now that we're virtually meeting through, Teams or Zoom or whatever the technology is, anyone can participate now. And so it's kind of expanded some of that option as well as to who can review what we are looking for in our committee meetings. But definitely for the city of Tucson, the biggest piece of it was the electronic bidding for us.
Well, great. Well, Jenn, I'm so appreciative of your perspective. I think it's really important to be able to find ways to highlight, and I think that the ability to get some of the procurement officers through a vehicle like this and create little abilities for people to see and hear who they do really humanize people and really connects people across the community, especially when we can't get together again yet. So I really am very appreciative of you for taking some time, and thanks for being with me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Hi, it's Dustin Lanier. Thanks for listening. Please find me on LinkedIn for original public sector operations content every week. And please reach out to me if I and my team of procurement professionals at Civic Initiatives can help you be a public procurement change agent.